Alright, so this is video number 2, and here I'm just going to be going over some of the stuff you need to know for the exam, being an IT person in general, and specifically just working with databases either now or in the future. So here it says, what is a database? And I have a database is a computerized system that makes it easy to search, select, and store information. Databases are used in many different places. And I have here what are some of that you can think of. Obviously, you guys are not going to be able to respond to me. This was created for my class. However, just think of any website where you've had to put in some information, right? I'll put the BBC links. I'll put any links I have to any web pages, videos, or anything else in my description so you guys can actually go and see where I got the information from. Go and either watch the video or read the article yourself. So again, think of any website that you've had to put some information into. Think of any app that you've ever downloaded. Think of the iOS App Store. Think of the Android Play Store. All of those things are connected to some form of database. Reason being, because there is some information being stored, you yourself can search and select information from those systems. And all of that information is stored in some form of database. So the purpose of a database, again, more or less the same thing. It makes it easy to search, select, store, and organize information. So when you're searching for something, you're using a query. When you're selecting the information, you're simply going through the database trying to find what you want. You selected the thing after you search for it. To store something, I think that's very obvious. You save the information, and to organize it, what if I want everything in ascending order, descending order? What if I want only people that have the surname beginning with GR, so on and so forth. Next, we have types of databases. Just going to quickly gloss over these. So we have a flat file database, we have a non-relational database, and we have relational databases. What we're going to be focusing on are relational databases. Here's a video. Again, I'll put this in the description. It gives a really nice, I think it was like 2 or 3 minutes. Well, 4 minutes, sorry. It's under 4 minutes. It gives a really nice introduction as to what databases are, why it's useful, so on and so forth. Just so I don't repeat the same thing, quickly go and watch that 4-minute video, come back to this one, and keep going, all right? Because that one is very generic, whereas mine is going to be tailored specifically for the Unit 2 exam. So, database management systems. So the two common types are non-relational, so no SQL is involved, and we have relational, SQL is involved, so sequence query language. What is SQL? Sequence query language is a written language used only to write specific queries. And again, a query, just like the English word, when you query something, it means you ask. It means you ask a question, which means that you're trying to get information back. That's what a query is. This is a powerful tool as user can define precisely what is required in a database. So again, it's like you searching on Google and saying, I don't know, Grand Theft Auto 5 Xbox Series X release date. And it should give you some decent results as to when that game is going to be released, right? SQL is a popular query language used with many databases. Relational database. A single flat file table is useful for recording a limited amount of data. So if you have a very small subset of information stroke data you want to save, a flat file database is going to be best for that. But a large flat file database can be inefficient as it takes up more space and memory than a relational database. It also requires new data to be added every time you enter a new record, whereas a relational database does not. Simply put, a flat file database is good for small subsets of information, again, small subsets of data. A relational database where things are related, where they are linked in some way, that's going to be best for having large amounts of data, because a flat file database, you have to store every single thing in one table or 1 or 2 tables, let's say. And when you want to search for something, it has to search the entire thing. Whereas a relational database, we can put or specify the criteria we want from multiple tables, and it will only give us that information. Relational database allows data to be stored in a clear, organized manner across multiple tables. And again, we'll go through what tables are, why they're important, how to create them later on. Links known as relationships are formed to allow the data to be shared across tables. So typically, for example, Amazon. Amazon has a customer table. They have an items table. They might have a customer service table. I don't know, right? They have information across multiple tables, and when they need to pull the information, so what item did person A buy? And if there was an issue with the item, which customer service agent did they speak to about that item? RDBMS databases, Relational Database Management System. Some people say software, more or less the same thing. Organizes interrelated rows and columns. I'm going to go over what rows and columns are as well, but rows go from left to right, up, so x-axis. Columns go from top to bottom, bottom to top. That's y-axis, if you remember your GCSE math stuff. Data is stored in tables. Data is indexed for faster data retrieval. So when it's indexed, it simply means it saves the data in such a way which makes it much faster to search, much faster to query the data. Relational databases allow data to be stored. Oh, that's the same thing there. Let's move on. And again, here's another video on a relational database. So again, this is a couple of minutes long, I'm guessing. I recommend you guys go there, watch it. This is actually from IBM. Many of you might not know that company, but it's a very old IT company and they have very good information. If you ever see any information from IBM, Cisco, Dell, any one of those big IT companies, it's always a good idea to watch that video instead of others, simply because they're leaders in that field. This is what they specialize in. Types of relational databases. So we have desktop. That's a simple one, right? We have client server based and web based. We have open source. So MySQL, SQL is open source. And you guys need to remember what open source is, not just for this exam, but again, general IT stuff that we need to know. And we have Microsoft Access, also known as MS Access. That's proprietary. Again, we need to know what this is. But quite simply, open source can be shared, edited, and redistributed by almost anyone who has the knowledge to do that. Proprietary, like Microsoft Access, is created, managed, and distributed by a single entity or company. So only Microsoft has permission to sell Microsoft Access to people. You don't have that permission. Only Microsoft has access to, has the permission, let's say, to update Access and to sell it and do whatever they want, because it's their property. It's not yours. You're just renting the use of it, all right? Database structure. So here we have tables, entities, columns, attributes, rows, and fields. So if you're used to Excel, these are called cells. So those individual boxes that we have, they're called cells. So here is a table or an entity, and this simply holds the data. So the database table is where all the data in a database is stored. This is what we have created ourselves in Microsoft Access. So I think I just grabbed a screenshot from somewhere. So this is a table, a very simple table, but a table nonetheless. It's also called an entity. So this is the entity I want. This might be, this could be the product table in a database. So we might have multiple tables. Again, we'll go over that later on. But this is going to be the product table, and it has information on products. I might have a customer table, and rather than this saying product ID, it might say first name. Rather than category, it might say last name. Rather than name here, it might say date of birth. That would be the customer table, the customer entity, which has all the details on customers. Cardinality, simply referred to as relationships between the data in two tables. So here we have degrees of relationship 1 to 1. We have 1 to many, and we also have many to many. I'm going to go over these when we start doing Access. I'm going to try and explain the importance of each one. But quite simply, 1 to 1, one record in a table is associated with one and only one record in another table. So here you can see I've got file ID linked to file ID here as well. That's 1 to 1. In a school database, each student has only one student ID, and each student ID is assigned to one person. Might be a bit confusing now, but again, when we start doing the practical, I'll show you how to do it. I'll explain again why it's important and what we do after we've created a relationship. Here we have 1 to many. This is the most common type of relationship that we will see when doing Unit 2. One record in an entity or table has many connections to another entity. So here we can see one doctor can have many patients, but many patients can have one doctor. That's saying exactly the same thing. When you book an appointment to go and see your GP, you are not typically allowed to see more than one GP in a single day. But that same GP that you saw can see many people. They can see up to, I'm guessing, 10, 20, 30 people in a single day. So again, one doctor can see many patients, as you can see here, but many patients. So everyone on your street is a patient. They can only see one doctor each. All right. So database attributes. Attributes are the column names. Or again, I remember I mentioned earlier, columns are the y-axis. They go from top to bottom, from bottom to top. The y-axis. If you remember your GCSE stuff, let me get my pen out. If you remember your GCSE stuff, this is going to be the x-axis. That's the y-axis. Okay. So y-axis is going to be called attributes. X-axis going to be called records. All right. The y-axis in a database from top to bottom, I've said that. They describe the data to be held under that column. So for example, here it says product name, right? And under product name, I've got chai, chang, aniseed syrup. I have no idea what this is about. I'm guessing it's about some form of drink or fruits or stuff you buy in a supermarket, right? So this tells me the name of the actual product. So that's going to be the column attribute. Next, we have product name, supplier, category ID. So each of these columns describe the type of data that we're going to be holding. So here it says quantity. It says 10 boxes times 20 bags, 12-ounce bottles, so on and so forth. But again, whatever you see at the very top, that is a mini description of what is going to be held there. Product ID, we have this in order, roughly, I think. Yep. So again, this tells us what is going to be held. So typically we have name, first name, last name, date of birth, place you were born in, so on and so forth. So database domain or data types and everything else, every other programming language or every other software you use, database domain is known as data types. And if you've done Unit 4, I believe, the programming unit, you would have known what data types are. If you did a GCSE Computer Science or GCSE IT, you might know as well. I'm not going to go over that here. I'm going to go over it on another slide. But, oh, it's actually here, sorry. So database domain. So this is a list of all the database or the data types that we can have in Microsoft Access. Now, you're not going to be making use of all of these. I will cover a few of them in the practical, but let me quickly explain what they are then. Short text. I believe this can only go up to 255 characters. So that will be good for like a first name and a last name. Long text would be good for a paragraph. It can be from 0 to, I don't even know how long this is. I will check the information later on. A number, that's pretty obvious. It has to be something that's 0 to 9. You can have decimals as well. Large number, I will double check that one as well. It's on the actual help page I have in the next slide. Date and time, pretty nice and obvious. So if you're asking someone for their date of birth, if you're asking someone to set an appointment date, you have to know the date and the time. Currency, pretty self-explanatory. For us here in the UK, it's going to be pounds, so it's going to be money. Auto number, it automatically counts in increments of 1 whenever you go to the next line. Again, I'll show you how that works. This is a yes, no, or it's known as a Boolean. So it could be yes, no, it could be black, white, up, down, whatever the case is. But typically yes, no is used. We're not going to be using this one, oily object. A hyperlink, simply a web page link, www.google.com. Attachment, we're not going to be using most of these again, but these are typically the ones that we need to be aware of. Attachment, imagine you're a worker for a school, right? You typically have a badge and an ID picture. So the attachment is going to be your ID photo, your ID picture. Calculated, simple math being done there. And lookup wizard, this is one that we might use quite a bit in this one. So lookup wizard gives you a drop-down list. So this data type thing here is actually a lookup wizard. I can only select from what they have given me. So imagine I ask you a question. Are you a private NHS patient or are you an NHS patient? Sorry. So are you private or public? So it might be private, P-R-I-V, and it might be public, P-U-B. So when I ask you private or public, you can only choose 2 options. This would be a really good use case for lookup wizard. So when the person clicks on the arrow, the only 2 options they see are P-R-I-V for private and P-U-B for public. They can never enter anything else. That's why we might use a lookup wizard. So this is a link to the Microsoft website here. I will open that. Let me quickly see if I can do it now. No, it doesn't work. Let's see if it works this way. Just bear with me 1 second. If I click on the link here, it tells me for each data type, it gives me an example. Let me zoom all the way in. All right, so for short text, it goes up to 255 characters. Oh, wow. So here we go for long text. It goes up to 64,000 characters. We won't ever need anything that long unless we're writing an entire essay or a couple hundred essays. Number, we have 1, 2, 4, 8, or 16 bytes. And if you guys remember from computer science again, 8 bits make a single byte. Okay, we have large number that's only 8 bytes. So I think it's safe to say that number would replace large number, because what that means is I can go up to 16 bytes with this one. This one only goes up to 8. What's the next one again? Date and time, 8 bytes, but we don't need to worry about this. Dates and times is all it cares about. We don't have data time extended. Currency, 8 bytes, that's money again. Auto number, 4 bytes. 16 bytes for replication ID. Don't worry too much about that. Just know that it holds 4 bytes. We don't actually need to know this, but I do think it's a good thing to go over the capabilities of whatever software you're going to be using. Yeah, I think I'll stop there now for that one, because the link is there. You guys feel free to go over it yourselves. Let me present this again. Let me go back to this. So sometimes you might see a row. So that's again is my pen on? No, let me turn my pen back on. There we go. So again, we spoke about the column earlier. The row is the one that goes along the x-axis, right? So it's typically referred to as a record, right? So again, at the top here, we have name, we have age, we have gender, we have location, right? So each of these things make up a complete record for a single person. So a tuple or a record goes from left to right, the x-axis, so to speak, whereas a column is the y-axis. Remember, we spoke about the column earlier, the y-axis, and the stuff at the top is called the column. This describes what's going to be held in that column, whereas a row or a record is everything about that one person. Again, I will go over this in later sections, but down here we have an entire record for someone, and here we have Bill Gates. That's his phone number. Apparently it's not, but I'm sure they just made that up. And here we have his email address, and down here we have his address. I'm guessing this might be his work address, right? This is all the information that we have on Bill Gates. So this is the record made for Bill Gates. Microsoft Access, that's the program we're going to be using. It's a database management system or software again. It was created by Microsoft. It is a closed source or proprietary software. Again, I have the link here, so feel free to download it. I'm actually going to show you guys how to download it, because most schools, I think I have that here, most schools, colleges, and universities give it for free. So I'm going to quickly show you how to do it. So typically you go to Outlook. So that's the email you get from your school. You go to Account Manager section. That's in the top right. So your initials in the top right hand corner. You click View Account from drop down list. You go to Office Apps, and this will come up, and you simply click Install. It will download something, and you can then go and install from there. So let me quickly show you guys how to do that. So I'm going to go to my email. Here I am. I'm going to go to the very top right hand corner here where it says Account Manager. Now I'm going to blur my stuff out so you guys won't see it very clearly. I'm going to click on that one there. I'm going to click on View Account. After I click on View Account, I'm going to go down to where it says Office Apps here on the bottom left, just above subscriptions. Click on that. It's going to come up with these two options here. When this comes up, you're going to simply make sure that version is ticked to 64-bit. I don't think anyone in this day and age would have a 32-bit operating system, but try 64-bit first. If that doesn't work, you come back here, you try 32-bit. You simply click on Install Office. It's going to download this tiny program here. Simply click on that when it's finished. If you're using Chrome, this is where it comes up. If you're using Firefox, Edge, or any one of the other browsers, I think it pops up in the top right hand corner if I'm not wrong. If it doesn't pop up anywhere, simply go to your downloads folder on your PC, and that's where it should be. All right, so that's it. That's how you install Microsoft Office. When it's finished, you should have all these programs installed. So you should have Microsoft Teams, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, Access, Publisher, Outlook for emails, Skype for video calls, and OneDrive for backing up your files. Let's see what we have next. So the next section I'm going to be focusing on will actually jump straight into using Microsoft Access. And before I go ahead and show you guys what we're going to do, I'm going to explain what it is in general, why it's important, and then I'll show you how to do it.